Hey there YouTube, it's Bobi aka Paginator, and I'm here today with my October reading wrap-up. First off, I have to start with an apology. I took quite a few of these books to school already for the kids to start reading, so some of these are just going to be a picture inserted rather than holding up the actual book. Okay, so in October, I finished 12 books. I attempted a 13th, but DNF'd it, and we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to start with Red Wolf by Rachel Vincent. This is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling where our main character, the female lead, is actually a wolf. She comes from generations of wolf shape-shifting women whose sworn duty it is to protect their surrounding villages from the dark forest that is very much alive. Not just the creatures inside, but the forest itself. And through the process of learning this about herself, our main character has to face the choice between pursuing her destiny and keeping the love of her life. It was very dark, very interesting read. And I already have a couple of kids who have read it, so it's been a good one to share with the middle schoolers. Up next is another one that's at the school. It is White Rose by Kip Wilson. This is a World War II era verse novel talking about the White Rose movement, which were some anti-Nazi German youth. And it's told from the point of view of the one documented that we know of female who was part of the group. And she contributed by dispersing pamphlets against the Nazis, and she was eventually caught, and I'll let you read the book to find out what happens to her, but very interesting read, and a quick one because it's in verse. Next we have The Missing of Claire de Lune, which is the second book in the Mirror Visitor series. In this one, our main character, Ophelia, is appointed to be vice storyteller to the god of the land, and she tells stories, and being in the public spotlight is really stressful for her. She's not sure what to do. She's kind of hated by the actual official storyteller as well as some of the other people in the kingdom, and scary things start to happen, and she's also, what can I tell you but without spoiling things, her fiance, she's in an arranged marriage with this guy called Thorn. He's really working on fixing some wrong things that are happening in the capital and also protecting her. We can see as readers that he's starting to develop feelings for her. She's still really wary of him and not sure exactly what he's up to. Read the series definitely in order. Start with the first one and then come to this one, The Missing of Claire de Lune. I believe there's 4 books in the series. I have the 3rd one, but the 4th one is pretty brand new, so I don't have that one yet. Up next we have Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is the Fairy Loot edition with the lovely stenciled edges. This is a Greek mythology story set in modern times in New York. Our main character, Lore, is kind of trying to get through this time period called the Aegon, which is happening every 7 years, I think. Yes, it's every 7 years. It lasts 1 week, and during this time, the Greek gods are being punished by Zeus, and he's forcing them to walk on Earth as mortals. They have to stay alive because they're being hunted by ancient bloodlines who are all eager to kill a god and seize their power and immortality. Lore is a part of the Perseus line, and she, her family was murdered by a rival line, and she really just wants to just be done and just go into hiding for the week of the Aegon, but she gets trapped into it when a goddess, Athena, who's really wounded, winds up on her doorstep, and she kind of gets roped into the politics and adventure and mayhem that happens. This was a really good read. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was fun to listen to as well, and I would definitely recommend this one if you're into Greek mythology at all. It's a great kind of modern retelling-ish kind of story. Up next, we had Each of Us a Desert. This is one that was recommended to me by my thesis professor. He's trying really hard because he's not familiar with the world of YA. Excuse me, they are not familiar with the world of YA, so they're trying really hard to recommend books for me to read. This has nothing to do with my thesis. This is not going to be helpful to me with my thesis, but it was a good story to read. It is kind of magical realism. It's by Marco Shiro, and it's about a character who is destined to wander the desert alone. She is given stories by the villagers, like kind of like a confession. Actually, they come and tell her stories, and then she's supposed to go turn around and release them into the desert. And she just really like wants a kindred spirit. She wants to not feel alone in this world. I am still not sure how to say her name. It's spelled Xochitl. So I called her Cho because it was abbreviated to XO, and in my mind, X sometimes makes the ch sound, so I called her Cho. So I'm sorry if this is wrong. But she is gifted a friend in the form of as the dust jacket tells us, the cold and beautiful daughter of the town's murderous conqueror. But these two have to go on a journey across the desert, and they find out if their hearts could be a match. Not just like good friends, but like a romantic connection as well. And they have to survive some really awful terrors that happen in the desert, especially when the sun goes down. Cho also makes a mistake in not releasing some of the stories that she's told, and it was really interesting. I would love to do some research and find out like if there's mythology behind this that it was inspired from, or if the author just came up with it. But I appreciate my professor's recommendation. They, like I said, are trying really hard to find books for me to read that will help inspire my thesis. Up next, we have a book that I ended up DNFing. This is Mask of Shadows by Lindsay Miller. I DNF'd this because it was super, super violent. Like within the first 20 pages, I'm like, I can't handle this right now. And that might seem odd considering some of the other violent stories that I'm going to tell you about later. But during that moment when I was trying to read this book, I just could not wrap my mind around the murdering that was going on. And I just had to set it aside. But if you are interested, here's what it's about. Salah Leon is a thief. Sal is non-binary. They want to escape life that they have as a highway robber, kind of a Robin Hood figure, and get closer to the upper class. And there's a competition. You can audition to become a member of the Left Hand, which is like the Queen's personal assassins. And so in this audition process, all of the assassins to be have to kill each other, and the last one standing gets the job. And it was just a lot of murder for me to take right then. Like, I know it's essentially like the Hunger Games with a different twist, so I probably will come back to this one, but just wasn't for me in that moment. Then we have another book that's at the school, which is a Season of Sinister Dreams by Tracy Banghart. This is about two girls, one who lives in the palace. She is the cousin of the prince and heir to the throne. And when the prince abdicates and runs off in the night, she is put in line to inherit from the king. She has a magical power that is very hard to control, and the night before the prince ran away, her magic unleashed itself in a way that she can't take back. So she's trying to hide the secret of what she did and step into this new role as now heir to the throne, and the king is very ill and dying, so she's probably going to be stepping up very soon. Our other character is a young girl who lives out in the country, and everyone around her has reached their magical powers, but she hasn't, until a vision comes to her, and we find out she is a clear see, meaning that she can have visions of the future. Her vision is of the death of the king and a threat in the form of a giant yellow wolf trying to usurp the throne from this girl who's now going to take the place of the king. These girls take turns telling us the story, and eventually we find out some really interesting plot twisty kind of things that I'm not going to tell you right now. There's some debate as to who the good character is and who's the not so good character. I'll let you decide as you read, but I highly recommend it, as well as anything by Tracy Banghart, because every book I've read by her has been phenomenal. Just so good. Next, we have Weird Things Customers Say in Bookstores by Jen Campbell. When I hauled this book, I did read a couple of bits to you. It is just what the title says, weird things that customers say. Jen Campbell works in a bookstore in England, and so she collected things from her own experience, as well as reaching out to some bookstore owners in the US, Canada, and other places in England. You can see I flagged some of the pages because they stood out to me, so I'll pick a couple to share with you. This one is something that I can relate to. The customer says, "Do you have any books on star signs?" The bookseller says, "Yes, our esoteric section is over here." The customer says, "Good, thanks. I just really need to check mine. I have this overwhelming feeling that something bad is going to happen." I'm not a huge believer in star signs, but I do oftentimes worry that bad things are going to happen because I have anxiety, and it's pretty bad sometimes. I don't think I would consult a star sign book on that, but, you know, maybe if I was desperate. This other one that I'll share with you is a geography question or situation. A man who was looking at a giant map on the wall of the bookstore says, "When did they move New Zealand way down by Australia? Wasn't it in Europe before?" One more. I'll share you one more because this is very relatable to any reading teacher, bookstore worker, librarian. This is very relatable. So a woman comes in, throws a piece of paper down on the desk. "I need these books." Bookseller says, "I'm sorry, I can't make out this handwriting." The woman says, "I can't read it either. My daughter wrote it. Just search for it." The bookseller says, "I can't search for it if I don't know what it is." The woman says, "Just guess." And the bookseller says, "Ma'am, the only word I can make out here is the B word for a female dog." Up next, we have Daughter of the Deep by Rick Riordan. This is his newest book. It is a retelling of 50,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We have a descendant of the famous or infamous Captain Nemo from the original story. And she, along with her brother, are the great something grandchildren of Captain Nemo, who built the Nautilus, which is a submarine that's very advanced. And Nemo is long gone, but the Nautilus may still be around. That's going to become important because after tragedy strikes, the school that she attends, our main character has to join forces with her friends to search for the Nautilus in hopes that it can help them recover what's left of their world. The school that they attend is really cool. It's similar to Hogwarts in that you're sorted into houses. Each house is represented by a different sea creature, so that's really fun. And all the jobs and things they're training and working towards have to do with the ocean. They're working with sea creatures, sea plants, or something to do with the ocean. And it was a really fun adventure with a highly intelligent submarine. Up next, we have Small Favors by Aaron A. Craig. If you have seen the movie The Village, you'll know it's about a very small, isolated village, and we have similar situation going on here. Not the same backstory as that movie, but a small, isolated village. So isolated, in fact, that they have to send men once or twice a year to out of the valley into a place where they can buy supplies. At the beginning of the book, we learn that one of these supply expeditions has been severely attacked by some dark creatures in the forest, and our main character, Ellery, and her twin brother, along with their parents, are just trying to survive on this farm. They raise bees for honey, and after this group is attacked, bad things start to go wrong in the village. It's almost as if they're under attack by some kind of evil dark force. People go missing, wildfires happen in people's crops and things, people's animals are murdered. There's all kinds of craziness going on, and of course they're all blaming each other. What they don't realize is there are some really dark forces going on within the woods as well as coming out of the woods, and they may or may not be recognizable to the people of this village. So Ellery is trying to cope with her siblings because her mother got really badly injured. Her father had to take her out of the valley to a hospital, so they are on their own. And in the meantime, a dark and mysterious stranger who's like a trapper in the woods has shown up and seems to fancy her, so there's that to deal with. But this was a very, very, very well written, very dark mystery with like historical fiction plus magic plus darkness vibes. Very, very worth your time to read. This is Erin A. Craig's second book, I believe. Her first one was great. This one was phenomenal. Just go read something by her. Here we have The Other Side of the Sky. This is a dual narrator book. We have North, who lives in a city in the sky, and Nim, who is the embodiment of a living goddess on Earth. North's people up in the sky left Earth years and like generations ago because they thought that the Earth was going to be destroyed, and his moms are now the ruling queens, and he is the prince set to take over, but he has ideas of his own, and one of them is this glider that he's built, and he decides that when his moms don't approve that this be used and developed for their society, he decides he's going to take it out for flight anyway, and ends up crashing down to Earth, where he's discovered by Nim, the living goddess. She is supposed to have magical powers, but they haven't quite developed yet. She has some magic, but like her true purpose of magic hasn't shown itself, and she's really frustrated and she feels phony some of the time. But when she discovers this guy who's fallen from the sky, she thinks he's part of an ancient prophecy and decides that she's got to do everything she can to make this prophecy come true because she feels it's her destiny. There are forces at work here that are wanting to uprise against her, and we have witchcraft, we have other types of magic going on, we have political intrigue, we've got betrayal, family drama, all kinds of craziness happens in this book. And the relationship between these two, he starts to like her right from the get-go, but she's not allowed to be physically touched or she'll lose her divinity. So they both are attracted to each other but cannot touch, not even to hold hands, high five, nothing. So there's a lot of tension between them, and it's very intriguing to see how that was done by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner to develop that relationship. Next, I read an ebook through NetGalley. It's called Murder Book by Hilary Fitzgerald Campbell. It is a graphic novel memoir of one woman's obsession with true crime and especially murders. She talks about her love for shows like Dateline, as well as true crime podcasts, movies. It highlights several well-known murder cases, such as the Zodiac Killer and many others. And it kind of tells the story of her journey through loving true crime. As a fellow true crime admirer, I appreciated this one very much. And last but not least, we have The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gold. This was recommended to me, and it was phenomenal. I immediately emailed the author upon finishing this to tell her how much I loved it. It is a spooky story set in a very small town in Oregon. Our main character, well, we've got two narrators again. Logan is a young teenage girl who's just finished up high school, and she's taking a gap year before she goes off to college. And she's traveled with her dads to their hometown. They are very well-known TV ghost hunters. And one of her dads is very distant with her and kind of feels disconnected. The other one's very loving and supportive. But they have said that they're going to be doing some investigation for the show in their hometown of Snakebite, Oregon. And so Logan, the daughter, goes with the dads, and she's pretty much hating life in a small town until she starts to make friends. One of her friends is our other narrator, Ashley. Her boyfriend has gone missing along with some other teenagers. Her boyfriend was the first one to go, and they all kind of, like, 3 or 4 more go missing throughout the course of the plot. And so these two team up to try to solve the mystery, try to find the missing friends, and see if they can figure out what the crap is going on in this town that seems to be kind of dark and creepy and cursed. Another one where dark forces are at work here. This one involves ghosts as well. Of course, the dads being ghost hunters, no surprise. And these two girls do develop feelings for one another, so there is that LGBT plus romance representation involved as well. Alrighty, that brings us to the end of the October wrap-up. Let's keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well with the video file this time and we don't have to refilm anything. Please. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books or what books you read in the month of October or how your October reading was. And I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, magical, and bookish day. Happy reading. Adios.